Good evening. We are here for the, we are starting our closed session for the Portola Valley Town Council for November 8th, 2023. We will take public comment before we go into closed session, but I see no attendees on Zoom and no one in the schoolhouse. So I will close public comment unless anyone here wants to say something not on the agenda, which I assume not. In that case, I will close public comment. We will stop the recording and we'll move to closed session. Thank you. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Town Council of Portola Valley. We will begin with roll call.
Councilmember Hefty. Here. Councilmember Taylor.
Present.
Sorry. Councilmember Haskell. Here. Vice Mayor Wernickeff. Here. Mayor Alves.
Here. Okay, thank you. We will begin the regular meeting with oral communications. If you wish to address the council on an item not on tonight's agenda, you may do so now. If anyone wish to address the council on an item not on the agenda, you can raise your hand here in the schoolhouse, or you can raise your hand on Zoom. And there are 28 attendees on Zoom. Rita has her hand up. Rita, go ahead.
Hi, I wanted to thank you for having addressing this important topic tonight, but I was wondering how soon would the electronic policy be put back onto the schedule? And I'm looking forward to the discussion tonight. And I'm just really pleased with our town that we're addressing this important issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I see no other hands up on Zoom. Does anyone in the schoolhouse want to talk about something not on the agenda? Okay, then I will close oral communications, and our next item will be item 6, which is a report out of closed session, which I will hand off to our town attorney.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The Council did meet in closed session last week to do a performance evaluation of the.
Sorry, can you clear the screen?
And demote Rita. Yeah.
I was just reporting out of closed session that the council met last week to do a performance evaluation of the town manager. Nothing to report out of that closed session. And then today, right before this meeting, the council met again in closed session to do a performance evaluation of the interim town attorney, myself. Nothing to report out of that closed session. And then finally, the council also met just before this meeting to discuss an item of conference with legal counsel anticipated litigation. This is the item significant exposure litigation regarding the public safety for PV now threat of litigation. I do have a report out of closed session on that item. The council did vote unanimously to extend the tolling agreement in that case, which was set to expire this Friday, another 90 days out to February 9th, 2024, which will give the town some more time to provide information to the public regarding fire safety work that is the result of staff coordination between the town and Woodside Fire Protection District. That is it for my report.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the town manager report, item 7. Just a quick reminder, we've moved the town manager report early in the meeting. That's actually consistent with what other jurisdictions do. We thought we'd give Sharif a chance to give a report near the beginning. So Sharif, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to move the town manager report. So it's not the last item of the night. I appreciate that. And also giving me an opportunity to address the town earlier in the day and hear important updates from me. I'll keep it short, for I do have a presentation on the town manager update and state of the town, if you will. Just wanted to highlight a couple things. Talking about the PV refresh, I'll talk about that at Portola Valley refresh, where we're going to have some opportunity to take a time out with staff to enhance staff development and training and different pieces. So we wanted to mention that that's from November 13th to the 22nd. We'll have some limited town hall hours, which I'll talk about in my presentation. And then just really looking forward to meeting folks. I've been trying to make a concerted effort to be out and about in the town and had some success with Coffee with the Town Manager. We have another Coffee with the Town Manager. It was well attended last time. And then also meeting with different committees. I just came from a meeting with several committee chairs and getting to hear their feedback and being able to meet and greet the group. And so looking forward to more of those discussions with committee chairs, with the committee members themselves, the community with the Coffee with the Town Manager and other pieces. And then I've been in ongoing meetings with the sheriff regarding our sheriff's contract. Be able to bring that soon to council so we can bring that to fruition and completion, if you will. Been very fruitful discussions and very open discussions with the sheriff and her team. And so looking forward to discussing that further. And then also just had a wonderful time meeting with the Sequoias and meeting with Sue Crane and Gary Nielsen, and just a wonderful group of folks there, and establishing that relationship with me. And so just excited to be there. So that was great. And Sarah was, and the mayor with me as well. So those are my quick updates, and I'll save the rest for my town manager update and state of the town, if you will. But most importantly, thank you for allowing the move in the agenda.
Right. Thank you, Sharif. Public comment on item 7. Anyone in the schoolhouse? Okay, I see no hands, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there public comment on the consent agenda? Items 8, B, and C. Okay, I think I see Carolyn Bertongen's hand up. Carolyn, go ahead.
Great. Good evening. Thank you very much for allowing me to give some comments. I'm very concerned about the warrant list, and I hope that members of town council and our new town manager will look at the details and give us more information. There's several consultants. We don't really know what they're doing. And for instance, I'm on the committee of the Bike, Pedestrian, and Traffic Safety Committee. We have an engineer. Again, there is a charge on this month's or this week's warrant list, and we don't know what he's doing. So I think it's important that consultants report back to the committees that are involved with the work that they do, and I hope you will support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Other comments on the consent agenda? I see no other hands on Zoom. Anyone here? No. Okay. Does anyone on the council wish to pull an item? Does anyone wish to pull an item from the consent agenda? I'm going to pull item C, 8C.
I have a couple comments on the minute.
Okay. So we're pulling 8. Okay, so we're going to pull 8A and 8C. So I will take I'll begin with a motion on the approval of 8B, which is the warrant list. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve the warrant list?
So moved. A second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Hefty. Aye. Councilmember Haskell.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Warnikoff. Aye. Mayor Els.
Aye, thank you. Okay, minutes, Judith, go ahead.
Yeah, I know that we were doing the best we could to capture the substance, and we had technical Zoom issues. But I would ask for there to be a clarification in the second paragraph. It just says dates were pushed out as far as HCD was comfortable with wrapping up in 2028. I think that needs a little more clarification of what was actually said. I don't have a, but dates were pushed out. There's a lot of important dates. So if we could.
That was all that was mentioned in his comments. There was no elaboration on it. That was almost verbatim.
Oh, I see. Is that how you came up? Okay, got it. All right, that's it then. That's totally fine. We'll deem them the best we could do under the
Yeah.
circumstances. Thanks.
Okay, do you want to make a motion to
Yeah,
accept? the minutes?
motion to accept the minute.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Councilmember Hefty.
Aye.
Councilmember Haskell,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Warnikoff,
Aye.
Mayor Alves.
Aye. Okay, that brings us to item 8C. So the item 8C includes 2 committee appointments. One of the appointments, we realized belatedly that was incorrectly identified. One of the applicants, Nancy Fair, applied for, was interested in conservation, but trails and paths. So we were going to, what I'd like to do is approve the other item, which is Troy Douthit to the Geologic Safety Committee, but we will, we were going to pull the Nancy's appointment and for next month and correct it and provide some other information there. So I would ask for a motion to approve Troy to the Geologic Safety Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Hefty,
Aye.
Councilmember Haskell,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Warnikoff.
Aye.
Mayor Alves.
Aye. And again, we will pull Nancy's application. We will be on consent next month. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item 9, which is the regular agenda, which is the town manager update and state of the town. So I will turn it over to our manager, Sharif.
Give me 1 second as I share my screen here. Just 1 second as it promotes me to panelist here, and I'll share my screen. Okay, forgive me for the delay here. Thank you, Council. Wanted to take this time to give a town manager update and a state of the town. I know I have a report in the council packet, and so I prepared just a brief PowerPoint on my experience so far as your town manager, and just give you my experience and where I think we're headed and where you have supported me in this endeavor. And so tonight, what I'd like to talk about and give some context is I've been here for about 2 months and wanted to provide my experience here and give some staff updates, talk about some of the community needs. Our financial situation obviously is the main portion of my presentation, talk about PV refresh and some of the next steps. And so walking in as your town managers, it's been pretty challenging, and you've heard me say before and talk before, but I wanted the community to be aware as well, is that our staff turnover has been pretty significant. And so we're at about 70% turnover since January. So almost every key position that we've had in the town has turned over. And so most of the staff are actually new. So we had our town manager, our town attorney, our assistant town manager, our town clerk, and the positions you see below have all turned over since in January. So it's been a significant challenge, is getting us back to a stable staff and get us back to staff where we can have our core group back to perform our functions as a town. And then walking in, as you know, and part of what I even mentioned before I began is hoping to bring some of my financial expertise to the table and be able to bring that lens. And I certainly hope that I've done that tonight, and really addressing some of our urgent finance needs that we have. And I'll go into detail with that. At the same time, balancing the community needs, and our committees are still doing their work, and we have a lot of priorities and things that are still chugging along. So we're looking at the car as the car is moving down the road, as you will. And then really being new and reestablishing some of the roles and responsibilities between council, town manager, committees, and really tapping into our strengths, but also reiterating and reestablishing what our roles are for each one of us as we move forward. And so part of the mantra that I introduced when I came along and really concentrating with our in-house folks is reset, refocus, and restructure. What we really need to do is, being down so many staff, looking at our priorities, trying to make sure that we continue with all of our priorities as a town, was taking a look at resetting as a group, refocusing, and then restructuring where needed. And so what I've brought to exec team and has been embraced by us is that we need to evaluate all positions. It's not just an automatic, we're going to repost for the positions that we have. We're going to take a time out, evaluate the positions that we have, look at what's filled, what's current, what are the vacant positions, and if they need to be restructured or refocused, and if we need to change what each position does, because we are so small. And then also evaluating our consultant use. And consultants bring a great deal of expertise to the table. Sometimes they can do things faster and cheaper, and other times consultants can be expensive and can cost us money. And so really evaluating the use of our consultants and making the best use of our resources along with the consultant expertise, if you will. Another thing that was very important for me, one of the first things I did, unfortunately, when I came, was paring down the town hall hours. We are currently open 8 to 12 on our front desk, and then we are not open in the afternoon to the public. And so one of the things that was a main priority for us is enhancing and restoring those town hours, and we're going to do that beginning in December. Also, just taking a time out as a group with the new team that we have and the new staff that we're bringing on board is really a need for team building and training. And I'll talk about that piece, and really focusing on bringing that team back up to the level that we expect, and then refocusing on our priorities. And a lot of the pieces that you've seen is that absent, everything cannot be a priority. And so we can't have, when everything becomes a priority, then nothing's a priority. And really trying to focus on what our core priorities are and looking at what's due today, what's due next week, what's due next month, and making sure that we are back to that focus. And also, I'm in full support and supporting, I put this here because it's part of a restructure, if you will, is supporting the council-led endeavor regarding our committee restructures. And that's working with the committees that we have, whether or not they have a desire to be Brown Act committees, non-Brown Act committees, council appointed or town manager reporting committees, and we're bringing that to council in January. And so we've done a lot of legwork and really appreciate the work that Patty Dews has done with myself and the rest of the committees to bring that to town council. Just a current staff update of where we are right now. Just for the community and for council's reminder is that we do have 6 vacancies. And I do believe we're budgeted at 15 or 16 staff. And so to have 6 vacancies is pretty significant, to be down that many people. And we definitely feel it, the community feels it. And so my main priority, one of my biggest priorities, is making sure we have our core team back. And so, as you know, we have a vacancy for Director of Building and Planning. We have John Biggs, who's filling in the interim. We are posting for that position. We'll be recruiting shortly for that. We also have an interim Director of Finance position, which I'll talk about and go into detail. We have a Senior Management Analyst position, Development Review Technician, Associate Planner, and Maintenance Worker 1, 2. And so many of these positions we are evaluating. We're discussing as a team within the exec team on what positions need to be posted right away, what positions need to be revamped or looked at as far as responsibilities, and taking an opportunity to make sure we get the right positions in here. As with all of the Bay Area, all cities and all towns are struggling with recruitment. We are not immune to that. As you know, we are not close to a freeway. We're not close to a train. We don't have easy access to get here. And so traffic becomes a challenge in recruiting folks. We have our own challenges as a town. We have community needs. We have our finances. We have benefits and salaries that we need to take a look at. And so I really want to make sure that we can retain and recruit the best staff here. And that's including looking at our salary and benefit package. That includes flexibility, whether it's working from home or Zoom or whatever it may be, making sure we have the right folks in person when need be, but also, the traffic challenges, the town challenges. A simple Google search for any town, any city, yields results, and folks look at that when they're looking at their next position. And so that becomes a challenge as we move forward. They're not insurmountable, but at the same time, it's an issue that all of us in government are facing, is recruiting new talent and new folks to work for government. And one of the main things that was a major priority, obviously, is our financial situation. And obviously, being a former director of finance and having that finance hat and finance lens, if you will, was making sure that we take a look at our financial situation. So very quickly, what I did was bring on board Christian Company, which is a accountant firm and finance firm that was able to come in very quickly and take a look at our finances and really do a deep dive, a quick dive of where we are, where we're behind, and what things need to be addressed moving forward. And so I was very happy with the results of the report to get it done so quickly with their expertise. They have directors of finance on their team. Catherine Krish, who is the CEO of the company, was a former auditor for over 20 years. And so they bring a wealth of knowledge that can be able to bring this report out because they specialize in municipalities. They specialize in government finance. And so one of the things that we recognize very quickly, and we've talked about as a group, is that we are 2.5 years behind in certain areas when it comes to our year-end close, when it comes to our audits. And there are multiple areas and issues and areas of need that we have to take care of. And so we'll be looking at and reviewing our internal controls. We've had multiple systems that we purchased during COVID, multiple systems that we've purchased in the last year or two. Some of these systems we're using all of it. Other systems we're only using part of it. Other systems, they don't work. They don't talk to each other. And so it's been problematic bringing many of these systems up and going live. And so part of that with OpenGov, with EnerGov, with our business and licensing system, making sure that they talk to each other, making sure that we can get proper reports, that's been a challenge, but that's one thing that we'll be addressing moving forward. Obviously, adhering to policies and procedures, a big piece when you have the systems talking to each other and making sure we have the right information is the need for routine budget reporting. And so that's obviously a major priority, not only for council, but for myself and for staff, is we need to have proper actuals versus budget information, quarterly reports, a mid-year report, and those things just critical in order for us to make decisions. And you've heard me talk before that in order to make real decisions on our sheriff's contract, on the housing element, on the future of the town, coming up with a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, you have to have those solid financials in place. And so very quickly, one of the things that I've done, and along with Corey and with the executive team, is we've hired a second senior accountant. That senior accountant was in the works before I started. It did not pan through in the beginning, but we finally do have a very strong second senior accountant that's a full-time Portola Valley employee. We also very quickly hired a temporary finance technician, so the technician can come in and focus on technician work. So we're not paying high-level folks and senior accountants to do some of the technician work that we need to get us caught up on our backlog. And then immediately, one of the requests and the request for tonight is to hire a Christian Company, not only for the review, they're also working on our GAN limit, which will be brought in December, but also then looking at having them come in for 23 hours a week for about 6 months. And I'll talk about that piece as we move forward. And the 23 hours is specific. It's just the reason why it's 23 and not 24 or not 30 is that's the availability of Christian Company, the person that we'll be bringing on board, who is a director of finance level. And then also looking at the finance department restructure. And you've seen in the report that I'm recommending that we have an interim director of finance. Part of the thinking behind having an interim director as opposed to a permanent director is having an interim director come, have a focused task of getting us caught up, and having that then be a clean slate for a new director to come on board. And so not bringing someone in that's going to get burnt out, just trying to get us caught up, but having it so that it's in a better spot. And so the request is to move forward with an interim director of finance. And what we've done is Cindy Rodas, who's been here for many years and is our current director of finance. And we have mutually agreed that she's going to become our admin services manager moving forward. So Cindy is staying with the town. She's staying with our team, and she'll become our admin services manager, which then gives us a path forward to hire an interim director of finance and a permanent director moving forward. So there'll be a transition plan with our current director for at least November and December until we can get an interim director in. And so very pleased that we have that transition plan in place so we can have a seamless plan moving forward. One of the biggest pieces for me, obviously, and there's been a lot of discussion and passion regarding our funds and our investments and the funds that are in our Schwab account and other pieces. You've heard from council members, you've heard from committees, you've heard from other folks. How can we maximize our funds? What is that we can do? We finally have all of our behind the scenes ducks in a row, if you will, signature authority, cards, all those things are updated. I did make a transfer about 10 days ago of $1.1 million to Schwab so that we can get a money market fund that gets us a very good return on our dollar, which is over 5%. And happy to announce that I'm able now to make transfers. And so what I'll be able to do starting next week is I'll be making another significant transfer to Schwab to be able to get us to maximize our funds. So there's been discussion about, oh, we're only getting 1% here, or we're getting 3% there. Very quickly, we'll be maximizing our funds where we can, and I'll be transferring funds very shortly to be able to do that. There is some discussion about some of the funds are making 1%. I do believe it's actually 3 or 4% that we're getting now in our LAIF account, which is our state funded account. But there's still a delta between obviously 3% and 5% that we can maximize those dollars. So to be continued on that piece. Another thing that I'll be doing is I'll be putting out an RFP for an investment firm that will help us with our funds moving forward. And these are investment firms that specialize in municipalities. And so we'll get an RFP out. I will ask for feedback and help from the finance committee to be able to help us write this RFP, if you will. I'll provide a draft and then get their feedback. And then hopefully very quickly, we're talking months, not years, that we'll have an investment firm specializing in municipal finance to help us maximize our dollars, and then be able to get back into compliance with our investment reports. We're required to have investment reports every 3 months, every quarter. We can start bringing that back to council moving forward. And so just really talking about, obviously, the proactive approach that we're taking, being transparent. I released the CRIS report to the public so the folks could see it, be aware of exactly what we're talking about, what we're doing moving forward. I've talked to George Savage and informed him of the report in advance that was sent to Finance Committee. We also sent out a press release talking about our finances and just really being very transparent and open of where we are, where we stand, and not only where we stand, but then what's the plan moving forward to get ahead and get us moving forward. So part of that message of having that reset and that refocus is what we're calling internally as Portola Valley Refresh. And this is a staff-focused effort that we're doing between the days of November 13th and 22nd, which is basically next week to the week before Thanksgiving. And so what we're planning on doing is having staff working 8 to 10 at the counter, open doors for the public, but then also having a block of time every day from 10 to 3, where we're going to take a time out for staff development and staff training, getting us trained on different modules, and whether it's the EOC procedure, whether it's our OpenGov software, whether it's sexual harassment training, whatever it is that we need to get compliant on, but having all of our employees in the room at the same time and getting us focused on what we need to do to serve the public better. And so those will be from the days of the 13th to the 22nd. We'll have staff working from 8 to 10 and from 3 to 5. So we just ask for a little bit of patience as we do that reset. So you might be calling town hall, leave a message, and our expectation is folks will call back between those hours or address what your needs are. We're also asking council members to come individually and introduce themselves to our employees and reestablish that relationship, introduce yourself, talk about what you're passionate about, your time with council. And it's a chance for you to see the staff as well. And then also just really focusing on efficiency, cross-training. And we're just small. We're a small town, we're a small group, and we need to cross-train and learn each other's roles and jobs. And as I'm walking by the front desk, can I take a payment? Can I take a business license and put it in the right spot? And so just making sure we're all on the same page. And I think it'll go a long way with morale and with team dynamics for us to take a time out, because we've been in putting out these fire modes for all this time. It's been hard. And so I think that'll go very far. And so at the end result of this, in the first week of December, what we're looking to do is to have a town hall meet and greet, basically an open house, to invite the community, to invite the public to come to town hall, see our staff, meet our staff, put a name to the face of the folks that are helping you. Many folks are new, they haven't seen folks in the community, and the community hasn't met some of the new staff. And so coming out of this PV refresh and this timeout, if you will, is we'll have enhanced hours. And so what we'll do is we'll bring back hours for the counter. And what I'm proposing is that we will have counter open from 8 to 4 every day for the community and for residents to address what they need in the town. 4 to 5 will be that time for staff to catch up. And so really bringing back that core group. We'll have at least 1 or 2 people at the counter to help. And then what we're looking to do, which has been pretty common practice in the Bay Area, is to close every other Friday and get us and the community used to every other Friday. And almost every Bay Area town and city alternates that, which is that schedule. And so reintroducing that here, but I think that'll go a long way to for the community to know that the doors are open again. And then one of the things that I wrote here, and I wanted to make it clear also, is just refocusing on respect, civility, compliance. I think once we get to know each other, once we get to see each other, put a name to the face, we would kind of restore some of that, because I think that's been lost. There's been a little bit of tension in the air with turnover and with staff and with the community, and I really want to reestablish that relationship and reopen the doors, literally and figuratively speaking. So, but moving forward, we talked about the PV refresh. We're talking about our council and our staff. We're new. We have new council members. We have new staff members, and just really want to start fresh as a group. And then understanding it's the finance needs and its impact. With finances impact everything that we do. It impacts my decisions on a daily basis, the council's decisions. The committees are asking for their budget and for their finances and their reports as well. And then also making sure we reestablish the roles and relationships and responsibilities. I am in awe and just, I love the volunteerism and the passion of the town and all of the work that folks do. And I welcome that. As town manager, we're only 13, 14, 15 staff strong. So we need the help of the committees and the volunteers. But at the same time, we all have roles and we have responsibilities. And I think that's been lost over time and that's been blurred over time, and just really reestablishing what's my role as town manager, what's your role as a committee member, what's your role as a council member, and establishing that. I know you as council have been passionate about resetting that, if you will. And so next steps, I think this is my last slide, is refocusing on priorities. And you can see here, there's a lot of priorities. And so when everything is a priority, nothing's a priority. And so we need to be clear on what our next steps are and what we need to do. And so when we talk about finance, compliance, and catch up, and restoring town staffing and sheriff's contract and housing element and emergency preparedness and the Stanford Wedge and revenue enhancements and the viability of our town moving forward as a 5-year and 10-year plan, there's a lot here. And so really just want to take it not only one day at a time, but also looking forward is first, and just reiterating that reset, refocus, restructure so that we can address all these priorities, because we got some big items here, and purposely with exec team and with our staff, really trying to focus on that refocus and that restructure this calendar year, because once we get into January, we got some pretty big topics and items and things that we need to do. And so we have to pass our housing element. We have to get a budget in place. We have to move forward on all these different decisions. And so I look forward to the next steps and very optimistic of where we can be. And I'm glad to be here and glad to help lead our staff and our community to get us there. And so I'm very happy to report out that, and I do want to make sure that we're clear and, for public record, and we've invited the newspaper and different pieces. We are not bankrupt. We are not broke. Our finances are fine. We are just behind. And so we need to get up to date, but we are not running out of money. We are not bankrupt. We just need to get caught up to date, in compliance, and get us our reporting that we need and the things that we need to get done. So I appreciate your support as council, and I appreciate the work that we're doing together.
Thank you, Sharif. We'll start with council questions for Sharif, and then we'll take public comment, and then we'll come back for council discussion. So council questions. Mary, do you have questions or?
No, it's very clear. And it's a great plan.
Great.
The only question I have is the last slide in terms of the priorities. I think if I read that correctly, those are priorities that you've seen coming into town and they're here and now. Are you envisioning, or how are you envisioning those getting council input over time, like to help prioritize? Because you're right.
Yeah, yeah, great question. And to be clear, my priorities are council priorities, right? And so what you put together as council, it's my job to help implement those. These are the priorities of what I've heard are priorities, or when I drive home, these are the things that are on my mind, right? And so there's no order to this, there's no piece, but what we need to do is probably put these in order and put timestamps to them. And I've heard many times that we need to put dates and be able to say, I'm going to come back on this date and we're going to accomplish X, right? As opposed to just being these soft things that we need to talk about. And so the next piece is really saying, housing element needs to be on January 24th. We need to have that completed. The, you know, the safety element, let's put a date to that as opposed to it needs to just get approved. And so to your point, council member, it's really is making sure we put a date to it, deliver that. And if we don't make that date, that's fine, but we need to communicate that, right? And so they're not so soft and squishy and just out there. And so, yeah, and I'm here, your job is to hold me accountable to make sure that we can, to get those done, so.
Thanks for clarifying.
Sarah, do you have a question?
I got most of my questions answered in our one-on-one, but just for clarity in terms of, you know, all of the next steps with the Krish report, when you look forward at the next budget cycle, do you have a sense yet of like the key dates and steps in that process and how all of that work is going to impact that?
Yes, thank you for reminding me. One of the things that I did put in my written report is I will be coming back in February with actual deliverables and dates. So right now it's a little too soft where I'm not able to commit to a date to say we're going to get this done by this date. But I believe by February, with Krish's help, we'll be able to say, and so now that's February, in May, for example, we're going to have X, and in this date, we're going to have this piece. And so I'll come back with a clear deliverable of timelines. And so we'll know what's 3 months out, what's 6 months out, what did we already fix? And so that the council and the community can clearly see what we're accomplishing. So.
Thank you.
Good. I don't have any questions either. I think I've had them answered. So we will move to public comment. I see David Cardinal's hand is up, and then I'll take a couple. David, go ahead.
Great, thanks. First, Sharif, that's amazing. I think you've done an incredible job with lots of help, of course, but that's exciting. I have one maybe quick question, which is your note about hiring and traffic, which is obvious. One option we have as a town is to get allocated affordable housing units as a part of planned developments like the Stanford Wedge, where we've been offered some number of units we could allocate. Do you think it would be helpful if we could offer affordable housing to potential employees? Thanks.
Thank you, David. We'll collect questions and we can answer them as fit. Betsy has her hand up in the schoolhouse. Betsy, go ahead.
Hello, staff, and thank you, Mayor Alves. Hello, Town Council. I want to first address the hard stuff. Well, that's probably all I have to address tonight. It's hard to stand here in front of you. I'm very fond of you. I expect to run into all of you multiple times for the rest of our years here. And I will greet you warmly. But reading that Kirsch and Company's review reflected the massive nature of our failures. And the bottom line here is an almost unbelievable absence of past oversight. That was really hard to swallow. It was hard too that there were so many red flags that I think got missed along the way. They were evident and plentiful, and just to list three, to which there weren't adequate responses, if any responses that I heard. The first would be that our longtime former manager exercised full control over our financials without oversight for his tenure. The second would be, and that's not to cast aspersions on the person, it's the process. I trust the process. Then you don't have to worry about the people. So that was a setup that he himself, I'm sorry, didn't call to our attention. In June 2018 to 11 months later of May 2019, there was a revolving door in finance where we received 3 successive applicants. They were hired and they departed. We don't know the circumstances of each one of their departures, but they departed. The 4th person is with us today. And third, whereas in 2018, 2019, the town received yearly financial statements that were hard to track. So I was quite enthusiastic when in 2019 mid-year, it was proposed that we would move to OpenGov. But since then we have had essentially no financials. Any one of those three things to me is by itself a very big red flag. But I didn't hear conversation around the dais, not nearly enough about any one of those issues, about the processes that we had in place. So here we stand together, collected at a really awkward moment. Auditors are reliant on what they're provided. It's not up to them to design the systems of checks and balances. That is up to us. So I want to take this opportunity to thank Town Manager Edmund for a report that we want to make a turning point. But it's no more than an opportunity right now. And given our recent history, I can only hope that we're up to the task. It means a good deal more than simply hiring Kirsch and Company to begin executing what is truly a daunting to-do list. And
Betsy, you
in
need to
a
wrap up.
time frame that is tight. I'd like 15 more seconds. How does a government cover this level of non-performance is a question that I've been asking myself, and I don't know the answer, though I believe that asking that question of every person who occupies a position of responsibility, as well as completing as soon as possible the work Kirsch and Company have outlined, is where the hope of our future lies. Thank you for the extra time.
Thank you. I do not see any other hands up on Zoom right now. Okay, no, Christy Corley has her hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for that report. It was quite thorough and quite shocking. Excuse me, a few things that I have a question about. I didn't see completing a full traffic report for our town and looking forward in the next 8 years with many things coming into our town on one road with 2 ways out for evacuation. So I would hope that you would have the full traffic report as a priority. I'm not sure I saw it there. Another question would be, I know we had a contractor, Jim Seiko, in the finance area. I'm not sure what he did in the past. We'd like to get some clarity on that and know whether he's still with the town. And I'd like Hawthorne's to be on the Hawthorne's meetings to be on our calendar, since it is 79 acres in our town, minus the 13, I guess now. But I think that we need more awareness on the Hawthorne's process. The parking and the has been discussed recently. There were very few of us there, and I'm wondering what you can do for further communication to get our residents engaged in something that could affect us for many years to come. And also, if we add a parking overflow problem, possibly with Hawthorne's, how do we go back and fix the Windy Hill parking overflow problems prior? In addition, we're as part of the permit for the next parking lot. So those are my 4 questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Christy. Rusty has his hand up. Go ahead, Rusty.
Thank you. I want to underscore and expand on Betsy Morgenthaler's points. First, Sharif, thank you very much for the candor and the courage to bring this forward and to do it so early in your tenure, to make a clean break with the past and to see that we take the steps needed to correct some of the mistakes that we've been making. It is a sobering and very unsettling report, but equally unsettling and disturbing is the lack of any questioning by the current council regarding the unstated implications of this report. Don't you have any curiosity or concern about how our finances could possibly have gotten so far off the rail over the last 3 years and what we're going to do about it? Let me just underscore 3 aspects of this. The report calls out that we have woefully inadequate internal controls, meaning we don't know where our money's going or how we're spending it. And we don't have any records of that enable us to account on a current basis how we're spending our money. Secondly, there's no contemporaneous or current reporting or accounting reconciliation of budget to actual expenses, and thus no public disclosure to the residents of town how we're doing against our budget and whether our budget is reasonable or not, and therefore how we can prepare a future budget. And thirdly, there have been no audited financials for 3 years. So the question is, the question that hasn't been addressed tonight, and I haven't heard discussed, is how did we possibly get here? What was the town council doing over the last 3 years? What was the finance committee doing over the last 3 years? How was this allowed to happen? And what steps do we, the residents of town, need to take to ensure it doesn't happen again? That's what I would like to hear this town council discuss in public before the residents of town, so we can understand whether we have a government that's paying attention to what's going on here and is competent to govern. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rusty. I see Allison Wood Illich's hand up. Allison, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. And Sharif, thank you for the report and also for the opportunity to meet you at the town coffee the other day. That was great. I really hear the message loud and clear that it is really hard to recruit people right now for the positions that you have open. And I am just wondering, and just hear me out, I know this may be kind of out of the box, but there are a lot of qualified retired folks that live right here in town. And I'm wondering, as you're looking at restructuring or redefining some of the positions that you have to fill, if you might consider restructuring them in such a way that residents here in the town could take on some of the responsibilities, whether either job sharing or doing some of the work remotely, particularly where it comes to some of the technician responsibilities with data entry or processing applications, being there to respond to questions from other residents. I mean, a few of us could just go on a training and learn open.gov, something to do in the meantime until things settle down. I think there may be a few people who might be able to help if things were structured in such a way that it works with our other commitments here. So it's just a thought. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Allison. Next hand I see is Carolyn Vertonghen. Carolyn, go ahead.
Good evening. I really concur the comments of my fellow residents, Betsy, Rusty, and Allison, even Christy Corley. I also thank the manager for his summary, and it's quite remarkable. But so let's hope that we move to a better future. We are the residents. This is a small community. There's so many volunteers. We love this community, and I hope that the town manager will reach out to all the volunteers who want to help him. And that includes the committees and the commissions. So please, I I know staff is new. We are the residents who are committed to make this community vibrant and survive during these financial hard times. So please reach out to us, and thank you for this summary, and hope you will succeed in your endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. I don't see any other hands on Zoom. And does anyone else in the schoolhouse want to comment? Okay, then I will close public comment, and then we will bring it back here for discussion.
Mayor, if I may, just one point of
Yeah.
clarity. In my written report, the request that I'm making tonight is a recommendation to enlist the help of Christian Company, which is the $135,000 request for the next 6 months. That's a rough estimate. The goal would be that I would bring this back probably every 2 months and give an update, not only to council, but to the community of where we stand in this endeavor. I did write that the fiscal impact is that it would come out of reserves. I'm fairly confident that we have plenty of vacancy savings to be able to help pay for not only for the interim director of finance and for this Chris report, but just to be safe, instead of saying that we have the money and then come back later, what I wanted to say is that this would come out of reserves unless the vacancy savings was to help pay with that. So having 5-6 vacant staff, we do have plenty of room, if you will, for this contract.
Great, thank you for that. If you'll indulge me, I want to talk a little bit about this, because there's a long history here, and it's history of really trying to essentially modernize our finances and other operations. I've been watching this over the last several years. 10 years ago, the council hired Nick Figueros as our manager, and Nick was a finance professional. He came from the town of Los Altos Hills. He was their finance director. He was our manager, and he brought us several. I mean, he saw deficiencies in how we were doing things here, and he sought to start modernizing them, and he achieved many things. And one of the biggest things he achieved was we paid down $1 million of CalPERS liability, which has put us in very good financial shape. It saved us a lot of money over the subsequent years. He did that fairly early on in his tenure here. He left in 2015. Jeremy came in beginning of 2016 and also identified shortcomings and needs for modernization of our systems. And he worked on that. He had limited resources at times. We had a lot of conversations about the fact that we needed to do things differently. He brought in OpenGov as an effort to sort of bring our accounting, I mean, literally from almost books done by hand to a modern system. OpenGov has had a lot of shortcomings, and it has not worked as advertised. It's been a struggle. I know you have all had a lot of conversations with Jeremy before he left. I had many more of them both before and after you joined. There's been a lot of work and a lot of thought about how to put this system on better footing. There's also been just competing needs for resources. It's been difficult. It is hard to recruit people here. When our previous finance director left in 2018, at least one recruitment was held that was not successful. We tried to recruit someone and couldn't get one at the time. It's been a struggle. COVID did not help with any of this. The help we put in place for Cindy and her work was not always available during that time. There's a lot of work to do here. It is not, and it's frustrating. It is not for a lack of effort. It's also, I would argue, not for a lack of oversight. We have been paying attention to this and realizing there were problems. I will say I was not aware of all the problems this report's identified. There is more work than I realized at the time, but I'm really glad that we have this in front of us. And part of the reason that we agreed on Sharif was because we agreed that we needed someone with a finance background, and frankly, someone with a more professional finance background from a larger city with more complicated finances. And we're moving forward into a time where we really need to professionalize these operations. And one of the big things we need to think about is that this needs to be done by professionals. And we need to stick to our role of oversight of those professionals, but keep in mind that we are in fact volunteers. And I, for one, do not have the expertise to actually look into our accounting systems and figure out how they work. It is good that we have Sharif here, and he's gone out and found the people who can help us make those systems work properly. So thank you for this report. And I'm very relieved that we're getting this, that we're getting all this on the table and that we can move forward. Other comments? We're on the discussion. So.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your comments. I think it was very well said. And my position on this has been to keep looking forward and to not look back as much as just to say, yes, we've had problems all along, but the idea is we're going to get this right for now, right for this this round. So I see so many good things happening here. I do love the idea of partnering with the residents a little bit in this transition period. Now, I realize that there's not been universal acceptance of that idea, but I think there are residents who have some expertise. There are people who would be interested in applying for these jobs that have houses here. And now with virtual, I think we need to recognize it doesn't necessarily have to have been a town employee somewhere else, that there may be people that you could bring on who could do this particularly remotely. People do travel, but remotely you can do a lot of data entry and you don't need to take any office space. So that's one thing. The other thing I wanted to, that has been hurting my feelings about this process is the exit interviews. I have not felt privileged to understand why we were losing some of the people that we were losing. And I've offered to help if it was a strain of people to do those interviews, but I never really understood why all these people were leaving. We didn't hire anybody. And were they leaving because because they were aware of this and it was not getting solved? I don't know, but what that mystery has not been revealed to me as a council member. So, but it's easy to speculate. And I think it's important that we have the information that says that's not the reason they left. So that's one thing in terms of discussion. I agree with the traffic report. I think we're going to have to do, in hearing your priorities, I think I did have the same reaction that Judith had, which is that we worked pretty hard on figuring out what our priorities were. And the first was finance, and that's why we're where we are right now. That was our number 1 priority for the council. The second was safety. And that's where things like the traffic report and the safety element keep raising their heads, and why fire is our hot topic. So I would like to see your priorities, making sure that you're aware of what we've done with the council's priorities. I think that may be what I've got, but I'm just really excited about this. It's a great moment.
So yeah, thank you for the report. I totally appreciate that it's only been 2 months, but I really appreciate you hit the ground running and you pulled together some important stuff. You've heard from me multiple times about sort of dates for dates. I appreciate with Gershon Company that we're going to get some dates on the financials. I think it'd be nice to put some stakes in the ground for our priorities. And I agree with Mary. I'd like to see the priorities organized around the council priorities. And I think that would be a good way to get this stuff organized. And then the last piece is I'd like to see some kind of report on the processes that we're going to use for oversight. In other words, the one thing I think Betsy called it out, I certainly felt that is sure we had COVID and a bunch of other stuff. And, at some level, not having audits for 2 or 3 years is sort of canary in the coal mine. But, that's not really the kind of oversight process that we want. There really should have been a check and balance. It should have gotten called out. I mean, we're way off the rails. And I think, we all acknowledge that. But I'd like to see a report that says, how are we going to know this sooner next time? So I would like to see that on your list as well. Thank you.
Well, you've only been here for 2 months, but this is incredibly useful for our community to have insight into. And we largely thought you could bring a lot to the table, and you've shown that you can in terms of helping us understand where we are and more importantly, mapping out a way to get right. So this is hard to hear, hard to understand in the moment. It's a little overwhelming, but it's a great opportunity for us to get it right going forward. So I really appreciate that. Staff turnover is hard. I think we're making great steps. We have a way to go, but I know you're focused on that, and let us know what we can do to help support any of that. The actual financial situation, I understand the community's concern about how did we get here. I really do. Very serious concerns have been raised. And I would say each of us has had a little time with this information more than the public. So if we're not asking all kinds of questions and pounding the table, part of it is that we're already starting to process in our minds. That at least I'll speak for myself. That's part of where I'm coming from. And I'm trying to think, what does this mean for us? We at least I as a council member will not take my eye off of the finance aspect while I'm in this role. And you should expect a lot of questions, maybe too many, especially in the near term. But I think it's important with the transparency that you've provided today that it continues. So we'll work with you on that. But if it gets a bit burdensome, that's why. And the value of looking back to me is more to inform how to get to the right place going forward. So in a constructive way, if there are lessons learned about how we got to the point, I take all of Jeff's points, and those are really, there have been many efforts. But if you look back and discover why there's no controls or obvious glitches, I'd like to hear about, and here's what we're doing to prevent that ever happening again. And I think the public needs that too, that type of assurance. What is the recipe for regular reporting, regular insight? And frankly, can we have opportunities for Q&A periodically, at least for the next year or two until we're current with our audits? And I think that's part of your plan, but I just want to request that it really be baked in on a periodic basis, that we have an opportunity to hear as things are being solved, how they're being solved, and why we're comfortable that this is going to be better going forward. So that's going to be my focus as this rolls out. And it's not a trivial thing. So I also want to acknowledge that. To the extent you have the opportunity to engage the community, I think there is a great point there. While we're looking at how to recruit well, really don't ignore the opportunity to, if it's practical and available, engage the community to do stuff that you might not think they're willing to do. At least ask the question if it works from a governance compliance point of view. And last, in terms of the priorities, what I heard you say was you're going to be working with us, and those priorities were things that you actually wanted direction on, right? And so we'll be having those discussions. But you may not be aware, we had a priority setting discussion earlier in the year. And Mary's right, finances are right at the top. So right in our view, it'll remain as such, my guess is, for a while. And safety and housing are going to be right up there. But let us work with you to help set priorities, because we're not going to get through all of this in parallel. We just aren't. There's going to be things that lag. The finances and fixing it, I don't think will be one of them. It'll just be a question of putting the right steps in the right order. So thank you for this. Thanks for the transparency. And, the public should take away that we're going to be focused in changing the mechanisms and mechanics going forward. Thank you.
I'm going to try, and a lot has been said that I completely agree with. So apologies if I'm a little redundant. I do want to echo what Judith said is we have had a few days to absorb all of this. We've all had, I'm assuming, I know I have one-on-one meetings with Sharif. We've talked about it. We've dissected it. We've asked questions. So again, realize but the public is kind of just seeing this in the last couple of days and without an interface with us, but it has been very top of mind and something that we've all been looking at and working with Sharif on in our one-on-one meetings. I just want to echo what other people have said. Sharif, you really have hit the ground running. You've only been here 2 months, and we really appreciate. I really appreciate your deep dive and your quick study, your direct approach, and your transparent style. You see things, as soon as you see them, you're highlighting them, you're working on them. And I just really think that's a terrific step in terms of professionalizing the culture of what I see as needing more of that kind of business mentality within the office here. So I really appreciate that about your approach so far. Obviously, you've quickly identified, the issues with compliance and our financial controls. And I appreciate also Betsy's comment is, how do we learn from this? How did we miss that? It's hard to know. Obviously, the audits is a major thing, and we've been discussing that for quite some time. But besides that, how do we know what we don't know? And some of the things on this list wouldn't have even come up in an audit, for instance. So what is that thing that we can be doing going forward to kind of check those things off? In terms of the team, obviously losing 70% and having to come into an organization that's got a lot of vacancies and is in a difficult point with morale, I really appreciate your focus on rebuilding the team, having a team orientation. You use that word a lot, and I really appreciate that, along with focusing on civility and really building culture and morale. We have a great opportunity to do that. That's the silver lining of all the open positions and the turnover. And I just applaud your approach to addressing all those things. So thank you. I also just want to say that I think I'm forgetting what you're calling the few days when you guys are going to be taking the time to do professional development, but I think that's an excellent idea. Obviously, it'll be great in terms of training, but I also think it'll be great for you and your staff in terms of community building. So I'm so glad you're taking that approach. So thank you.
I'll just follow up by saying I support that there's sort of two initiatives you've outlined, and I'm very supportive of both of them. And one is the reset, refocus, restructure, the break we're going to take at the town center. And then I do support the hiring of Krish to really start addressing these finance issues. I mean, it feels like throwing money at a problem and no one likes doing that. But the fact is, part of my point was we've been trying to make these changes over a long period of time, and now they're here and we don't really have a way to avoid them anymore. So now we're going to throw some money at them, frankly, to make up for money we probably should have thrown at them previously. So I support the two things in here, especially we do need to take action on the authorization for Krish, but there's other discussion.
I have one other, maybe not the greatest question, but there are a couple of things in the report that had sort of legal implications that I didn't know what they were about, like the GAN, that we have to go back to 76 or something to be able to even calculate that. Should that have been picked up, I don't know, by the lawyer or by the regulators? But let me just finish see if I can pull the whole thing together, because that was only part of it. I with the audits, there was an obfuscation, and maybe that's too strong a word, or maybe not, but the audits weren't important for a municipality. Somehow we were exempt because we were a municipality. And that kind of lack of transparency is what I think was the most alarming, because then when it doesn't take long to find out that audits are just as important for a town as they are for a business. So those triggers, we're trying to figure out how to set up these checklists. Does the attorney have to make sure that we've done our McGann? Does the attorney have to make sure that the audit's done? Does the legislation in Sacramento make sure that we've done these things? And I just never, I don't know what that process is like, what the double checks are that are provided. Because surely we are one of the towns in California that are trying the hardest to do good work. So I can't imagine that that everybody else is not needing to be double checked in some way. So I guess that's my question, and don't know if there's an answer.
Yeah, do you want to answer that?
I don't have an answer for all of your questions, Councilmember Hefty, but what I wanted to respond was just the general questions and concerns that you all had. And part of tonight was introducing myself as town manager. This is me, this is my style, this is how I approach issues, and I am transparent, and transparent's a nice fancy word that people use. It's a buzzword, but I like to be transparent by doing. And so releasing this to the public, releasing it to the press, showing that, you know, we have concerns, and really being proactive as opposed to reactive is my style. And so this is just one of many approaches that I'll bring in the future as we talk about other items that we need to bring. And so just wanted to reiterate that piece. And I thank you for allowing me to be honest, to be open, to be blunt, and bring things to the table so that folks can hear it. And I mentioned with my staff, I mentioned to the community, if you haven't heard it from me, you know, ask me. And if you haven't heard from me, it's probably not true. And so this is my style moving forward. And I appreciate you and I appreciate your feedback and also your praise as we move forward. I'm only as good as my team. We have a wonderful assistant town manager in Corey, and her leadership and what she's done and what she brings to the table is huge. I'm only as good as the staff we have. And as a town, if we invite mediocrity, we're going to get mediocrity. If we invite excellence, we're going to get excellence, right? And that goes into how we pay, what we do, what we recruit, affordable housing, affordable rent, flexible hours. All those pieces are things that we have to look at as a town. And so moving forward, that's my commitment to you. One of the things we can also do is, whether it's coming from me or from Christian Company, or we can cross-reference it with another town or city, is bringing to you, what are the deliverables? What are we required to do as a finance organization, right? And so then you can hold me accountable as your town manager and say, Sharif, it's February, this report is due. Where are we at with this report? It's now May, this report is due to the state. Have we turned that in, right? And then you can hold me accountable as your town manager. So I can hold staff accountable to say, it's May, where is this report? So number one, obviously, is getting caught up, getting us up to speed, but then also getting us on a cadence and getting us on a calendar so we know exactly what to do by when. And we say audits are behind. Audits are just the high level of all the detail, right? So when you say we don't have an audit, what it means is you need your month-end close, you need your payroll journals, you need your entries, you need your different pieces. And so those things this is a jump start. We've heard some council members refer to this as a jump start. This is to allow us to get a jump start, because this is not status quo. We have an extra accountant full-time, senior accountant full-time. We have a full-time finance technician. We have Christian Company. Jim Sacco is still on board. He has not committed to the same hours as he had in the past, but he is still on staff to help us. So this is all, all in to get us caught up and see a significant difference in January, in February, in March of next year, because it's not just business as usual. We're not just chugging along with our 1 or 2 staff. And so looking forward to bringing you back periodic updates of where we're at, and then also talking about how this does not happen again and how we can move forward. One last piece, if I can read my handwriting, is, as we mentioned, bringing a level of profession and professionalism here. There are certain things that only staff can do and that we're required to do. There are also things that I do welcome help from the community, whether it's in volunteerism or from the committees. I will be relying very heavily on the finance committee for their expertise and their knowledge moving forward. I'm very pleased and very happy working with George Savage, talking with Bill Urban multiple times. I talked to him today for the first time personally. And so there's a lot of things that I'll be tapping into the finance committee as well to get us moving forward. I use this many times to say, we are a company. We are a multi-million-dollar company. We just happen to be government, and we happen to be in the business of helping the community. So at the end of the day, we have millions of dollars in our care. We want to make sure that we have it done with integrity. We're maximizing our resources. And the very last statement is, my priorities are your priorities. So your council priorities, that's what you hired me to do, is to help implement and carry those out. So thank you very much for the time today and allowing me to bring this to the table. And the promise is to come back with periodic updates and have dates attached to many of those, so that we feel better, the community feels better, that we're really making progress as we move forward. My very first slide, I think I glanced over it, glossed over it really quickly. It was drinking from a fire hose. And that's how it's been for the first 60 days for me. And that's actually a picture from our town picnic, where I asked the Woodside Fire if I could, borrow the hose and drink from the hose. But we'll get there. I'm confident we'll get there. And I appreciate all of your support to get us moving forward.
So if there's any more discussion, we can do that. The one item we do need to approve the authority for the Christian company. So if there's any more questions about that or discussion, I think. Yep.
Yeah, so I move that we approve $135,000 for a 6-month contract with Kirshen Company, and authorize the town manager to spend that money.
I
I
second
second.
it. We both second.
I'm going to give it to Mary. Any other discussion?
The only thing is, I want to make it clear, this is to jumpstart, to make a huge difference. And I think it's super important that we do it. So I fully support doing this. I do think I want to assure the community that we are going to also put in place the right people internally, and that this isn't going to be a permanent solution, that will evolve in parallel. But we have to do this now to get us to the right place.
Okay. With that, I'll call for roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Hefty,
Aye.
Councilmember Haskell,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Warnikoff. Aye. Mayor Else.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item 9B, the colleagues memo on affordable housing fund policy. Are you going to start? Or?
All right. Okay, so many months ago, Mary and I were appointed as a subcommittee to determine a policy around what I'll call for tonight the Affordable Housing Fund. We have in the past had issues where we had an opportunity to approve use of funds to support affordable housing, and we didn't have a policy in place, and the prior council had determined that it was not comfortable proceeding using the Affordable Housing Fund money for that project until there was a policy. So that was a while ago now. And Mary and I stepped up to try and understand what would such a policy cover and how to come up with one. So tonight we're looking for comments, input, and we would plan to bring back an updated proposed policy. This is the starting point. We welcome the community's comments, and I'm sure there's going to be many points that we want to stop and discuss here and give direction to staff to help us move this one step farther. I will note that we've already been working with the Finance Committee, the Open Space Committee, and the Race and Equity Committee to get their input from their unique perspectives on our town as to what the best uses of this money might be, $4.6 million at this moment, and how they might think about prioritizing projects or using this money. In the course of all of this, there were a lot of really interesting policy aspects to consider that I don't think, at least speaking for myself, I really realized when I was getting into this, because I don't have the background in these types of policies. But once you look at our colleagues' memo, there are at least 7 points that were needing input and discussion from the council. And these came about from our discussions both with Laura Russell and John Biggs, as well as rising in these community committees and they're important points. And I think to tailor a policy to Portola Valley and have it kind of grow to organically reflect our town, we started with a template. We tried to include some of the principles from these 3 subcommittees to date where it seemed appropriate, but we certainly welcome further input and ideas. What we were intending, and I suppose it's a legitimate discussion point, is that this be a high level policy that says, here are the considerations that we think should guide viewing an opportunity. This is not, at least as far as I'm concerned, intended to be a document that says, once you have an opportunity for development, or say you had 2 come in together, necessarily which one of those absolutely should get priority or absolutely should get a lot of money or a little money. These are principles and values of the community that should guide a discussion by the council to evaluate the committee and hopefully give guidance to the community and developers where there might be some support for efforts. So the 7 questions is where I'd suggest that we do focus and try and get through, but we don't have to be that formal. If you have ones like each of us goes through and just wants to offer up perspective, that could also be a way of getting through this. Last, I really do want to thank these, each of the 3 committees formed a subcommittee that in turn met several times, and the attachment to the colleagues memo has a lot of their great thoughts. And that actually should be a continual working document for us to reference going forward, because there was a lot of good thought put into that, innovative ideas, and we didn't want to lose that. So we just put it as an attachment, but it's not the policy, it's the background on how we got here. So with that, Mary, what have I missed, or what do you want to overlay?
No, I don't. I think you, I guess the reason I was attracted to this is, again, it was one of those things that I didn't really understand why we weren't using these funds. And so I wanted to be part of this process so that I could understand it. And I now do understand it. I much better. I don't know that we've yet been able to translate it into a policy. I hope you realize that we do not feel that we've created a policy that we can vote on like now, but just something as a springboard for us to start making decisions. I think it does need to be professionalized, and it needs to have the input of the developers, of the third-party agents that come in and do affordable housing for us, because they apparently are some of the, they are a stakeholder. They're going to be a stakeholder to get anybody to come do this work here. So I guess that maybe that's all I need to say. I think Judith has nailed it and given us seven points to work on for a discussion that we should do, and just work through it.
Before we get into that, can I ask a process question? And so first of all, thank you very much, Judith and Mary, for all the time that's gone into this. Well, it's a lot of time. So in terms of, and I appreciate this is draft 1 of a multi-step process. For me to kind of evaluate where we are right now, it's helpful to understand where we're headed. And I automatically jump to, okay, working back from when we get an application of somebody that wants to use this, what do we want the steps in the process to be? And so my sense is this step is like the overarching policy, but a step that would come after this, I'm just brainstorming with you here, and unless you guys have an idea of what that would be, but there must be something that gets more into an application that has criteria that would enable us as a council to be able to really evaluate something. So if we have a policy, even after we shore this up with all of these answers, I feel like if something came in, I still don't think that this would be a tool that would really help us navigate to an answer. And so I'm wondering if that's just my point of view or are like, if you guys have, she's shaking her head.
No, I'm
and,
saying yes. So you're
Um,
right.
pardon me?
Right now, we haven't gotten to that yet. I think it has to be clear enough so that we can feel that.
Well, that, okay. So I'm going
Um,
to ask John Biggs to help us
Yes.
with this.
Do we
Go
want to,
ahead.
well, I was just, usually we would do questions, public comment, and then
Yeah.
discussion. Do you want to, do we table this to discussion or do you want to have this? I mean, I.
To me, it's a question on what
if-
this
if-
is.
Maybe if you want John to
What
comment,
this
maybe we
is.
have John comment and then we go to. public comment. Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying.
No rest
So-
for the weary.
So just a preview, there is a separate information and discussion that we should get into about what happens when an application comes in. This is not, in my view, supposed to be a stepwise guide to how you get from an application to approval or not. If you try to do that, you're kind of locking the town council into something and you have a lot of decision trees. If this, then that, if these 5 come in at one time, this one wins, but if it's a 6th one of a different nature, that one wins. You can't do that. You need a framework. I didn't see a way to get to what you're looking for. I do think though, getting a process in mind of how applications might come in and be vetted against this is going to be a helpful point. So I'm going to ask John to talk a little bit from a planning perspective, how these documents evolve and are used.
Sure. Thank you very much, Councilmember Haskell and members of the Town Council. As Councilmember Haskell mentioned, and so did Councilmember Hupty, this is really a document that provides a framework and some guidance for the council to consider when an opportunity for affordable housing comes about. And affordable housing opportunities can come about in a lot of different ways. There could be a site that someone identifies and says, I think this would be a good housing site. That could start a conversation with members of the city council. It could be something as simple as a council goal stating we would like to see affordable housing accomplished within a couple of years. And then that sets the path for staff to follow in order to start looking for a site that would work to provide affordable housing opportunities. So I don't think this is really, as Councilmember Haskell mentioned, a path that gets us from point A to point B. Rather, it's some guidelines that allows you to be flexible and allows the council to use its discretion and act swiftly when opportunities avail themselves. So.
I get that. I think the question that helps me understand and give feedback on this is what is like at a high level. I'm not expecting, out of 4 different things, how do we decide this, that, the other thing? What have you seen or what would be that step after a project comes in, it fits within the policy guidelines, now what? Like, how does that work?
Well, I've been involved in at least 3 or 4 separate affordable housing projects. And typically what takes place is a site is identified for affordable housing, and then there's an effort to either acquire the site or come up with the funding for the site, or partner with an affordable housing provider to acquire the site and develop the plans to see the site develop. So all of that takes place before an actual application is submitted to the city to take through the entitlement process. So it's kind of the opportunity that avails itself at some point in the future. Here's a site, we think it's available. Maybe we need to talk to a property owner. Maybe you need to give direction to your town manager to negotiate with the owner of the property or their real estate representatives to bring it to a point where the town is ready to use its funds it has to acquire the property. So there's a lot of different things that could avail themselves or opportunities that avail themselves for you to acquire or provide for affordable.
As further background, not discussion, when we were talking about your other experiences, however they come in, if we're outreaching or we're identifying, a developer comes in, at that point, someone on staff, maybe the town manager, gets a better understanding of what that is, right?
Correct.
And then based on that, approaches the council for discussion and direction. Is that the next step? And maybe you can lead through.
Yes, typically when that occurs, a site is identified, the council item would be agendized requesting, the town manager would be requesting that the council give him authority, him or her authority to negotiate for the purchase of the site or to negotiate with a developer to purchase the site and develop plans for development of the site. So.
And that's where the policy might come in to enable that discussion to be principled.
Exactly. I see the policy as being one, you might have a developer that says they have a site, they're going to be developing a market rate project with some affordable units. In order to make the project pencil out, they're seeking your money, but keeping in mind that with a density bonus project, they could be getting some extra market rate units that are supposed to offset the cost of the affordable units. That may not be a good deal for the city versus a nonprofit housing developer that says, I want to do 100% affordable units. I need your money to make this pencil out. It's the leverage that I need to get the tax credits, the other funding sources to realize a full financing package for all the affordable units that we want to build.
Other questions for John, Mary, or Judith? before we go
Yeah,
to public
so
comment?
it's sort of a question, and I'm also trying to sort of maybe recast what you're saying is, I mean, is this policy a set of principles that we're trying to give developers visibility into, if they were going to develop within the town, these are the things that you can expect from the town. And I don't mean down at here's the, administrative forms you need to fill out. But I mean, why would they even show up if they don't have a sense for, what, like we're looking for deed restricted, long-term, low, very low, whatever. I mean, a set of principles that we lay out so that they can go, hey, these guys might fund my project, so I'm going to go talk to them, which is a little different than the way you cast it as somebody's going to show up and then we're going to pull out our principles and we're going to see if they just happen to match up.
Yeah, I don't see this really as a document for developers. I think this is a guidance document for you, the town council. I think that, and it's been my experience actually, that an affordable housing developer, if it finds a site that lends itself to being developed with affordable units, will come forward and seek to partner with the agency. That happened in Los Altos when I was there. We had a wonderful opportunity that came forward, and it was because of the circumstances, because it was a government-owned piece of property. The town got first option to purchase it, and us with the county and an affordable housing provider were able to partner and acquire the property and develop a project there.
Yeah, and I'm trying to how to stay in the question mode here. So that it seems like that's so unlikely in Portola Valley that there's just magically going to be a piece of property that a developer is going to say, that's my piece of property. Now I'm going to go talk to them. But it really does feel to me like we need to find a way to let developers know, here's what's available to you.
Well, we are doing that. I mean, we have our housing element, which provides the list of sites that have the potential for being developed with more housing units right now, subject to some adjustments in the future if you find alternate sites. But I've worked in Los Altos, I've worked in 2 coastal communities where the cost of land is really, really high. And in each of those places, we have been able to develop affordable housing projects.
Right, but I guess I was asking in the context of, this is a policy for the housing fund that we have.
Mhm.
And like, how would a developer know that there's money here that they could get to potentially offset the ridiculously high prices of land here. That's, I guess, what I was trying to get at, because generally I take your point is, you know, if it was a normal place and they could find some place to develop, then they'd come to us and we'd start working, and then we decide if it makes sense. But here, this does feel a little bit more like we need a policy that helps developers understand if they were going to spend their time and money, because it obviously takes money to develop a proposal, what we're likely to say yes to. And I was hoping that was kind of what the policy was, sort of like, here are our principles, you know, if you're sort of meeting these, then the chances of us saying yes are relatively high versus, you know, I think you were starting to get at that. If you're going to build housing with a few low income, but you're going to sell above market, maybe that's not the deal that we want.
Right.
That was sort of what I was curious is, could our policy make it a little clearer that, no, we're really looking, if we're going to give you money, we're really looking for you to do 100%, you know, long term. I mean, whatever. I'm not sure I'm asking a super clear question here, but you see what I'm trying to get at?
I see what you're trying to get at. And I guess the response that I would have is most developers will identify a site. They'll stop by the town hall office and say, hey, what do you think about this? And that's the opportunity for your staff to share. Look, I think if you're providing 100% affordable housing, we've got a policy that encourages affordable housing and allows you to at least come forward to the city council or town council, excuse me, to ask for these funds to realize that the project get constructed. And that starts a conversation and it leads to affordable housing units.
Can I ask a follow-up? Do you mind? It's on the same thread that you're on, which is along the lines of the question I was asking. So it's a question of, I hear you that the policy as being written, at least in this first draft, is really like trying to get consensus around what are our principles. And obviously that's the place that we need to start. So it's not a criticism at all. The question is, within that, do we also need to be more explicit about what our incentives are? What are, you know, here are principles about what we want. You know, we will help purchase land, we'll help with construction, we'll help cover fees. You know, we're looking for 100% affordable or some mixed BMR units or whatever. So have the principles in there, but do we also in a policy, is that an appropriate place to say, these are the types of incentives we're going to be offering?
I don't think so, because every deal comes with its own package of incentives, financing, you know, the number of units that can be developed on the site. So I would leave it again as just the framework for guiding policy. I think you want to be clear that these funds are intended to be used for affordable housing projects, be it, you know, moderate affordable housing, very low, however you want to categorize that. I think that is probably the principal reason of this policy. You want to make sure that these funds are used for affordable housing and not something else, and that affordable housing is developed here in Portola Valley, not another location.
Could a developer come to us requesting funds sort of in parallel with their entitlement process? The question I got from a resident was, is a developer going to have to go through all the entitlements and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on getting permits before they can come to us for the funds, and not with the uncertainty? Can we sort of eliminate some of the uncertainty before they get really deep into the planning of the project? Or how far could we go in that direction?
You probably are going to wait till the end until the entire financing package is pulled together, but there's usually I forget the terminology, maybe our town attorney can help, but it's an agreement of intent or
The development disposition agreement,
something like that. That kind of-
pre-development agreement. type of a-
It protects the town, plus it protects the developer and provides a path to only hand over the funds once all the entitlements and the building permits are in hand. So you're not handing over funding or monies that you could theoretically lose. That I think you do that just by good course to protect the town's position. Sure.
Are there other questions right now? If not, we'll take public comment and we'll come back so we can discuss more. Oh, I was gonna, I thought we'd do that as part of discussion. If that's okay. Well, there, I mean, I'm guessing there were more questions. I'm just saying that I just wanted, somewhere in here, we should do public comment. I probably started with that. So,
I mean, the only question I would have about, without getting into, is number 6. I didn't even include it. So maybe before we take public comment, if somebody could just tell me what 6 means. And I don't want to discuss that.
Yeah, the concept, this derives from, I think, well, from the 3 committee memo. How expressed do you want to be about encouraging ADUs and JADUs? Because people had a perception on those committees that they are more likely to occur throughout the town and just be a little easier to get started with because those applications come in on a rolling basis, or they could, rather than putting like leaving them aside and really focusing on the bigger projects that are going to require a more fulsome plot of land and a lot more planning and expense. So how much do you want to be expressed about ADUs and JADUs?
Okay, so this is a proposal to potentially have a different track for funding ADUs and JADUs than you would for say, a low-income housing project. Is that? another
Yeah,
way to
or
cast it?
for example, do we want to say that we'll develop specific subsidies or specific programs about expediting ADUs and JADUs,
Okay.
which some of which is
With this
already
funds.
in process.
would we spend funding? Would we spend part
Yes,
of the funding to
exactly.
encourage ADU
Yes,
versus the other
exactly.
options we have?
That's exactly right.
Does that answer your question, Craig? Okay, if there's no other questions, just specific to your questions, I will take public comment and then we'll come back for discussion. I see 2 hands. David Cardinal and then Allison. David, go ahead.
Hi, thanks. First, I'm glad we have the money. And I want to amplify Craig's comments. I think in the last at least 10 years, we've had exactly one affordable housing development asked for money, which was Jim White's Willow Commons, which we didn't give it to him out of this. And in the next housing cycle, I think we could have 0 applicants unless we beg people or cut development agreements for town-owned land. I think the big question is, we should be happy to spend the money at any place where it helps us get affordable housing. And developers shouldn't have to beg for it or not beg for it. We're not going to have them line it up at our door. We're going to be lucky if we get any, frankly. And we've learned that. So I think it's more a matter of, can we deploy the $4 million in some way to help us get some of our housing element built? Because a lot of it is pretty tenuous and may or may not get built. Now, alternatively, we heard about ADUs and JDUs. I think that could be fine too. If we want to say, here's 50 grand, if you want to take your ADU and make it affordable for 2 years or 8 years or 55 years, that's fine. But I think it should be pretty hardcore. I mean, we're going to be lucky to spend the money. We haven't so far. Anything we can do to get affordable housing built, we should deploy our resources. I don't think we're going to get the housing built. So I don't think people are beating down our door to build those units. So I hope we can get them done. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Allison Litch, go ahead.
Hi, guys. I read through the memo and I actually really appreciated just, having all of the different ways this money could be used fleshed out. And there are certainly a lot of different creative ways. But I'm kind of with Dave on this, that having thought about this problem a lot, I don't see how any developer can come in and build affordable housing, quite frankly, unless it is on town-owned land. And one way to just simplify this whole policy process application thing is to just take all the money plus any more we can raise and go buy some land. and either lease that long-term to a developer, whatever the financial arrangement is, but offer it up on a silver platter. We need a lot of housing. And I really think that's the only way we can do it, and will be so simple compared to having so many different options or onesie twosie applications coming through, and how do we review them and how do we, implement it? Buy the land and be done with it. And then, when we, who knows, 100 years from now, we may not need that housing on there anymore, and we can turn it back into open space. I don't know. But that's my thought. And I think it's also better that, we take a real proactive and aggressive approach with that money rather than a passive one where we wait for people to come and ask for it. So that's my input. Thank you.
Thanks, Allison. I see no other hands on Zoom. And Judith here in the schoolhouse would like to speak. Go ahead. It is Judith, right?
Hi, I read the proposed, I don't know what you call it, a draft from Judith and Mary. I thought that it was a good balance of values, specificity, but also broadness. My understanding is that currently there is no policy at all. So you have no guidelines. So my recommendation would be go ahead and adopt a policy that at least gives you some guidelines. And then separately, as you're discussing, Craig and Sarah in particular, you're going to need something more specific that says, yes, if you want to say that your ADU will be affordable for low income, we can give you 50,000 toward upgrades or whatever. So I think that could come later, because as it stands right now, if I come to you with a proposal, you have nothing to work with. So I would just encourage you to take small steps and keep moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. Okay, now I see no other hands, so we can continue with discussion. I was going to clarify one thing in the policy. Well, and maybe this is my comment. Under administration, there's a line, town manager, this is page 29, town manager who shall have the authority to govern the fund consistent with this policy. But the reality is I can't imagine that any of the funds get dispersed from this without coming to the council. Is that a fair statement?
I personally think that it depends on what you do with ADUs and JADUs. I could see there being an initiative that is outside the policy saying, okay, here's a program for JADUs, 50,000 a piece if they deed restrict for 30 years. And then I would imagine that's something that is more easily implemented.
But so we'd agree to that proposal separately. That we would approve that, and then anybody who came in with it. Yeah, okay. Because and this is maybe my general feeling is that, we are such a small town, and the reality is even $4.6 million really doesn't go very far. So we could very well elect some, or a future council could very well decide that the best thing they could do is just spend all of it on one place. So I don't think we can spend too much time on like a framework and details of saying, well, this project, but not this project, just because it's really just going to be a question of how do, it's going to be a strategic question ultimately. And so for me, this whole policy is just giving us sort of what we didn't have with Willow Commons. We really didn't have permission at that point to sort of spend the money on something, no matter how much we all agreed it was appropriate project. And this is sort of giving us a list of things. This is what we actually think is appropriate. So now, but someone could come to us, but we could also or in the future, the council could say, okay, we are going to buy this piece of land, and it would come in front of us. And so it's sort of the idea that it's a set of principles and not sort of a really strict sort of checklist or anything like that is actually, I think it's reasonable. I think it's appropriate.
Right. I do. Some of the comments here have said we're going to be very, we should be proactive, and this doesn't preclude that. This does say that we can go out and purchase land to provide affordable housing. So I know people are looking for more granularity, but this is the way to open the door to look more formally at an opportunity. If there's a piece of land in town that comes up, there's nothing to stop anybody from saying, hey, town council, look at this opportunity, and we think it's worth 4.6 million to go after it. And the last thing I'll say, just to respond to your comments, is right now, this is the 4.6 million. I don't think, and John, tell me if I'm wrong, there's any preclusion of putting more funds in, depending on how we develop a funding source going forward, right?
That's a fair point. Other thoughts on, to that end, I mean, well, more thoughts or more comments on this?
I mean, I have some. I think what I was after when I was talking about visibility to developers is I think we should make it clear that we're expecting this stuff to be deed restricted, that we're expecting it to be long-term. I think those we can put in our policy.
Yeah.
And I can think we can define long-term, and we can say it's 25 years or greater or something. But, you know, so if a developer comes, they don't think, oh, long-term, that means more than 3 years or, you know, whatever. So, and I think that it's going to be deed restricted. So that was sort of what I was trying to get at. And that we would be willing to offer a forgivable loan if we are. I mean, I don't know, you know, but I mean, it seems like those are the things where we could say, you know, we have this fund. These are the kinds of things that we will consider and look favorably upon. So that was sort of what I meant by visibility, rather than having to find a piece of property, come in and say, oh, you have money. So what about this? What about that? That we give them some sense for kind of what we'd be willing to do. When I look at the actual questions, like limiting the funds, I would say on large projects, no, I am kind of, I mean, if we found a project that could use $4 million, I think we should spend the $4 million. Yeah. On the ADUs, I definitely feel like we should find a way to both limit that, make sure it's deed restricted. And the biggest concern I have with the ADUs and the JADUs is it real housing? You know, that's always been my concern, is people like, I'm going to build an ADU and then it never gets rented. So, you know, if we can put some kind of clause, not only that we'll give you money, but it has to be rented, and it can't be, you know, to your nanny. It's got to be, you know, a real rental. So it's real housing if we're going to give them money. Yeah. And if we are, then I'm good with that. But I'd like to see it be tighter than when I was in planning commission and we were allowing people to build ADUs, and you had no idea whether that was going to turn into housing style. So on number 2, I think I would be for pausing until we understand the sunrise, because that really gets into, would we give somebody a forgivable loan to build something? Are we going to use it as a land bank and we're going to buy property? Because if for the Dorothy Ford, we're going to have to find some other place, and it seems to me some other place is probably buying land. So I would be for pausing until we better understand how the sunrise period effort's going to work out. Land bank, you know, my biggest question there, it's much like the open space acquisition fund is, you know, it's a real question of how possible that is. You know, it's a very limited amount of money given the property value in Portola Valley. So, you know, we're really going to have to decide, like, you know, what can we get for our $4 million? You know, like if that's, wow, we just bought 1 acre of property and we just spent the entire funds, you know, I don't know if that feels like necessarily the right way to go, but I'd certainly leave it open. I mean, I certainly think the idea of land banking in the sort of big picture sounds great, because, you know, you give it to somebody, you lease it to them long-term, and when their lease is over, you get the land back, and then you either apply it to more housing or you sell it off and you use that money for something else. So I do like that form of banking if we can do it. On 4, I think we should be focused on low and very low. I mean, I think that's really the issue in the town. 5, this kind of felt like it didn't belong in the policy to me. So I would call it a non-policy issue. 6, see my earlier comments on ADUs. I mean, I think we could have some kind of almost ministerial But I'd expect some pretty tight guidelines around it. And then, yeah, I just think that the deed restriction in the long term, I mean, I really think that that's ultimately where this kind of money should go. I mean, those are the projects that we should be encouraging.
Yeah. Sarah, do you want to-
Sure. I'll just go through them in order too. Much of it aligns with Greg's. No cap on the funds for number one. For two, this is where we might have a little bit of a disagreement. I'm open to that in theory, but I wouldn't write it into the policy. We don't know. I just wouldn't want to put that type of firm decision on it. I think that's something we could discuss as a council, depending on where we are, and we don't know our timeline even for the sunrise right now. In terms of being able to, I think for number three, we should enable both with no prioritization and no limit. Number four, yes, the priority should be low, very low. Number five, I also didn't understand. Number six, yes, deed restricted. Or seven is, yeah, having a policy on deed restrictions. I had a couple of things that I should have asked in the question section. I realized, I apologize. When we go on to page 29, the way this starts to read, and maybe this is just my complete misunderstanding, it talks about establishing a fund. I thought we already had a fund and we're trying to decide how to spend it. I'm sorry, I'm at the top of page 29. It says establishment of the affordable housing fund there is hereby established by the town, so on and so forth. John, do you have a comment on that one?
Is it that we're now calling it this? Is that
The
what we're
rebranding
doing?
or the,
Rebranding.
Yes, rebranding. Yeah,
okay,
so-
that's not clear. Like,
Okay,
this was more like
okay.
saying we're gonna establish a fund. It's like, well, we've had a fund.
We've had the money.
Well,
We have an
even-
in lieu housing fund. This is now
Yeah.
saying we have an affordable housing fund and it includes fees from yeah, okay. Yeah.
To me, it was just a little confusing. We've had
That's it.
this fund for quite some time.
Yeah, we've had an in lieu fund, I understand, but this would be a bigger umbrella to capture other funds. You know,
Okay.
the affordable housing.
Okay.
But like,
How would other funds get in there? What would be the difference between in lieu as we know it today and what this would be?
There's a lot of different ways you could move money from your general fund into this fund. There could be development agreements with different developers, asking
Okay.
them to provide funding for affordable housing units. There could be the sale of city property at some point in
Okay.
the future. Grants that could come into
Got it.
the city.
Okay,
lot of
that's
different
very
ways.
helpful.
And I think probably we should include those options in the description. So that we know.
I think it's pretty broad
I
to
think it's,
capture.
yeah.
It's an affordable
I think
housing
it-
fund. However it gets funded, you
Well-
can use it for affordable housing.
And I think all this, all this is sort of things that are going to be future council decisions.
Yeah.
Like we can always, the council can put whatever it wants to ultimately in the affordable housing fund. It's just saying we have a fund. These are the things that we know are going into it, but anything else could go into it as well. So my personal preference is to keep the sort of qualifications minimal, just to give us flexibility. And that was my general comment on the questions, was most of them, I have to say my answer would probably be, it depends.
Yeah.
The caps, I'd say if there's a 4 point, if this fund is kind of a strategic tool for us or a future council. So it's sort of, there are things to consider, but it's like if spending it all in one place seems like the best impact and we go through that 2 years from now, or not me, but 3 years from now, then maybe it all goes to one place. I wouldn't legislate that. I wouldn't put that in here as a policy point. Preserving part of it for the sunrise period, again, something hypothetically, somebody could come to us with a really good project before we know all the details of the sunrise, and maybe we would spend it before the sunrise. So I would say, we're all well aware of it. So I think in future councils, I believe will be too. So I wouldn't write that into it. I will say, I share Craig's sort of, my hesitation about giving money for ADUs and JDUs has always been that you can build an ADU and you can even deed restrict it, and all that means you can't rent it for more than the affordable rent. You can it can be your home office, it can be your gym, it can, you can put your in-laws there. It's not, there's plenty of situations where a deed restricted ADU does not actually provide affordable housing. And so I would, I suggested in the past that we say like we will if you show us that you're renting it for below market rate, we'll we'll pay you a little extra on top of the rent you're collecting at that lower rate. I mean, it's a thought. I'm not even sure it's legal, but it's just
Oh, and we kind of talked about like potentially we could subsidize their rent
yes,
as a way of making
as
it
a
more affordable.
paying for performance rather than paying for a
Exactly.
structure.
Yeah, that something like that.
And as far as the deed restrictions, I mean, our arena requirements, actually, I mean, the deed restrictions are, some of them are, I believe, legally included. I mean, they're sort of, they have to deal with sort of AMI with market incomes. And also they have to, I mean, a lot of them do have to be 55 years to qualify for.
55 years is a standard.
Yeah.
So I know a few year spans have been mentioned. And I don't know if, I generally have seen 55 years. We certainly as staff could look into whether there's shorter periods to incentivize the ADU deed restrictions. But in terms of BMR units and any sort of agreement that we would enter into with affordable housing developer, I believe those would be 55 years or more.
And at whatever level, whichever, very low income based on local market or, county income. So.
I have some more when you're ready.
Good.
Well, if I want to.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to talk
Sorry.
process, but
Oh,
we'll keep,
okay.
let's go. keep
I
with
still
comments
had,
on that.
sorry, I have more. On administration, to your comments that you were making before, Jeff, I was a little confused on this whole paragraph because when I read it, it seems like it says the Affordable Housing Fund and all accounts within the fund shall be administered by the town manager. So that kind of gets into like, we don't even know what the policy is, the principle and all of that we've talked about. We don't know what the next step is. And so this kind of seems to talk about administration of it by the town manager, which seems confusing. And I'm just wondering do we even need this in here yet? Sometimes less is more, I
John, do you
guess.
want to speak to that?
Does administration literally mean, okay, the town council approved this, I'm going to approve the check, or is it more than that? What does administration mean here, I guess?
It's basically intended to make sure that the funds are appropriately accounted for. There's another section, the expenditure of the fund, where it specifies that the expenditure of the funds has to be approved by the council, and the terms and conditions can be applied to that agreement between the town and a developer or another entity. And where you can, we want to make sure at that point that we do include the deed restrictions, the income limitations, the length of the term for affordability and so forth, and other things that are important for the affordable units.
That might be a segue to my other question then, just terms in the format here is there's a section that talks about eligible fund expenses, which kind of lists out the types of things in number one that would be applicable, the types of projects, which makes sense. But then when you go down to, then there's another section on page 31 that says use of the Affordable Housing Fund money. And that parts of this, for me, in my read, is kind of a little bit of overlap and duplicative of the first. And it just seemed like, is there a way to simplify this format so that there's not these redundancies in here? I didn't really quite understand the distinctions between these.
Some things were moved around in the course, so the point's a fair one.
Yeah.
At one point, we had used terminology like guiding principles versus, specific uses. Do you recall?
I do, yes. And we can take a look at consolidating.
Yeah.
those
I
two
like guiding
categories.
principles and then uses. This
Yeah.
seems to like break those into 4 sections, which for me, I'm like,
No, I get it.
too many lists. I
get it.
get like, what's the difference? So that's just a little bit of feedback there. On item eligible fund expenses, item 1B in particular, that gets to land banking. This one, I guess, I know there's a lot of interest in purchasing land, but my sense is purchasing land is less than half the problem. The bigger problem is finding the developer that is going to develop that land without making a profit, And we haven't even scratched the surface in this town in terms of really educating ourselves as to what that means. The only exposure we've had to that is during the ad hoc housing element committee. We talked to a couple of the larger, affordable housing project organizations who indicated, break even at an absolute minimum of 50, for instance. So I guess I get concerned if there's an approach that says, okay, we're going to buy this plot of land, but we have no idea if it's financially feasible for anyone to ever come in and develop it. So that item I was a little concerned about.
Are you concerned about tying, if you're going to purchase, you got to make sure there's practical development, or what? I'm a little unclear if you also want to add another one that actually directly addresses working with developers on how to make it affordable, which I thought was covered by A in part, but it could be clearer.
Well, I think I don't necessarily have a solution. I'm more stating the problem, so I apologize for that. My concern is, how do we avoid a situation where land is identified and it's purchased and it's hoped it'll be developed, but then 10 years later it's still sitting there. So how do we write a policy that avoids that situation where that's almost like open space acquisition at that point versus developing? Yeah.
Well, it's
So it's just a flag.
to purchase suitable sites to build affordable housing. At some point, I would imagine the council comes up and says, that's not happening, like the Blue Oaks, and sell the land. I mean, I would think that's
Yeah.
just gonna play out. But the only permitted reason you can use that to purchase land is if you think it's affordable housing. So the burden would be on us to have
Yeah,
some confidence.
I think this allows us to do
Yeah.
that, but still making the council still at that point considering the case and deciding whether it's a really, that question of whether it's viable is still
Yeah.
something that's
Yeah.
sort of come to us and would under any circumstance.
Which is the suitable sites. I mean, in theory, you
Yes.
can't purchase a site that's not suitable. Not that Sarah's not right. We may
Yeah.
think it's suitable and it
That's
turns
right.
out not to be, but at least in theory, if we do our due diligence, it
Mhm.
would be suitable.
Thank you.
Sharif, did you want to?
I wanted just to interrupt. I'm sorry for the interruption. Once this discussion is over, there was a glitch in the system where Rita Combs wasn't able to call in. And so what it does, once you remove someone, it blocks them from entering back. And so she's on the phone. And so I wanted to respect her time and her comments. Whenever you're comfortable to allow her to speak, I think she has a couple of items she wants to speak on. One is the finance item, I believe this one. And so just wanted to interrupt that.
So process-wise,
Yeah.
I haven't commented. These
Right,
were just
right.
questions I wrote. So I just would have a couple of short comments, and Mary might as well. We chose not to put our finger on the scale in this document.
So we're not making a decision on this. We are offering feedback. So let's finish our discussion. I will, then Rita can comment after we finish our discussion. Is that-
And I'll be really quick. Just going through the 7. I think the burden can be on us to decide whether to use it all in one project or not. I do think the committee's input was they don't want that. So you should just know that some people are thinking that's not advisable. Say what?
So you said the committee, was that anything but the finance committee? Because that was where I saw that.
Yeah, I think they wanted it to not be just used for one. And so I actually, respecting that, I would say I'd be okay with it. I don't think I'd be too prescriptive though. Where feasible, avoid using it on one project. I think I am getting increasingly worried about the sunrise provision being effective, but I do want to make sure we can respond to opportunities quickly. So I personally would probably say, yeah, we should reflect some concept of making sure that the progress under the sunrise provision is considered. I don't know how prescriptive we really want to be on that. Purchasing land, I'd be okay with. I think we'll figure out how to make that work if it makes sense, but it's a low probability that it can be the complete picture. I would prioritize low and very low. Yeah, I think number 5 is a variation. Don't blow it all on one project. Don't spend everything. So I don't have a separate comment on that. I don't think that's that different from the first one. JADUs, I'm in complete alignment that deed restriction and maybe rental subsidies or something like that would be a way to go. 'Cause I think they have to be rented out at an affordable rate. And types of deed restrictions, I defer to staff to help us understand what's normal. Mary, do you have any?
Well, I've come to the conclusion that I feel that it should be only for deed restricted and for 55 years and for very low and low income. And because those are not going to be taken care of without doing this, I personally feel it's fine to spend it all in one place because if you're going to actually get anything done, the point being made that it's really hard to get this done. It's going to cost a bundle of money. So those would be my 2 things from my personal point of view. It doesn't mean everybody has to agree with me. Okay. I agree in principle. The fish that got away that got me sort of excited about this was that I thought I had a place that we could buy. And I thought that the process was so cumbersome that we would never be able to get it done. And in fact, it did get sold. And I kind of think that land banking, land banking is wonderful. It's makes you feel like you're doing something, right? Then you can, what you do with I understand it, is you get a option on the land, and then you have to do your due diligence, and you have to get buy-in from the council and from everybody. But there has to be some document that allows us to do that, and I think this does allow us to do that, and you can actually make money by buying land, and if it doesn't work out, you can sell it again. And this can be a way of making the fund bigger, but I think being able to spend it all in one place. And I think being able to do it particularly because we're feeling a little desperate about the Sunrise provision now is important, not in 2 years or 3 years, but in response to the amount of trouble we've gone to set this Sunrise thing up, the urgency we feel around low and very low housing, and the market. The rates are up, we have money, land's softening. And so there's some reasons why we shouldn't be putting this off. And we can create opportunities, but also their opportunities are showing up on Zillow, and I don't think it's at all unlikely that we could do this. So that's the optimist in me. I actually believe that it is doing it, and that we should be ready to act.
I have a question. Did you guys at all consider putting in a timeline? Like the goal is that the current fund is, spent during this RENA cycle, that kind of thing to.
You should put a premium on sooner rather than later.
I didn't, because I thought this was supposed to be a more general policy. And it's kind of in our control to actually do that.
But the discussion is important, that we as a council understand that sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think through what are the couple of times, and I think there's only been 2 that there's been an attempt to try and spend money. It didn't happen. So how do we, through this policy, assure that decisions are made? And
that's what the problem.
Were those, or I don't.
The one totally free. You were on the council, obviously, back over here at Al's,
Yes.
and then everything with the whites.
That will come.
But that, well, my recollection of that was we didn't have a policy in place, so we didn't spend it.
And
It
we,
didn't go very far as
Willow-
far as the,
for Willow Commons? or for-
yeah. I mean, you ended up
Willow Commons or for the,
for Willow Commons.
well, so we ended, I mean, we spent the money from
Yeah,
the general fund.
right.
I think we reserved the right to transfer some money from this back to the general fund. and make up
Okay.
that shortfall. I think we
Yeah.
sort of decided that once we have a
Okay.
policy in place,
Okay.
we could agree to that. if we
Yeah.
wanted to. So
Yeah, okay.
that was one. The other one. I'm trying
Either
to
way, we
remember.
don't need to go back,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just trying to think through like, what are the things?
But this does bring up the other question I wanted to ask. So we basically forgave or at least paid for the fees for Willow Commons, right, out of the general fund.
Mhm.
It's not clear to me when I look at this policy how we would pay those fees. Like
Oh,
there's,
which prong would it come under?
yeah, I mean, because there's really nothing about paying fees per se. I mean,
You have something to say.
Provide funding for pre-development and construction expenses.
Yeah.
but with that,
Other opportunities that are fully consistent, so then you go down to use of money and assist housing development corporations through loans, et cetera. I mean, we can look at that and add it if you think it's missing.
no, I mean,
have
I
no
just want to
problem with
make
that.
sure that that we're being clear that it's not just we're helping the project at the beginning, but it's part of, we're paying for the whole project, you know, because like in Willow Commons, right, we've just agreed to pay for the basically.
Waived our fees.
So we
Yeah.
waived our fees, but we haven't agreed to pay for the project. And so I just want to make sure that we thought this was general enough that when we were talking about pre-building fees,
Mhm.
that we meant potentially pre-building, but not the building itself. So that,
Yeah.
because I just want to make sure we have a way of coming back to this fund and basically funding that expense.
You can look and see if it's expressed. I don't have any problem.
I wasn't
making
concerned
that.
with, but if you want to clarify that.
Yeah.
sure.
I thought that John had clarified that to us, that it was better not to use that money for that.
In our discussions with the subcommittee, I would recommend that rather than paying the fees, that the town waive the fees, because that gives you a better leverage. You've got the cash that you're putting towards the project plus the waiving of the fees, which can be quite substantial and really helps you get additional
Mhm.
funding.
Mhm.
The
Long term.
waiver is different. This is about spending the money. The waiver would be a separate
Right,
thing.
a separate decision by council.
So, well, okay, and so and if we waive the fees, you're saying we would waive the fees, we would basically sort of take that from the, we take that hit from the general fund.
Yeah.
By
you're-
not collecting them and then
Yeah.
use the money, so we pay the
Yeah.
fees plus,
Yeah.
fees plus pay, yeah. Okay. If we were in a position to do that.
But this brings up a good example of like, I don't know what I don't know, where I agree this is, you know, it's the policy, it's about principles, it's big picture. But if there's, this language is vague like that, then there does seem like there's this subject to interpretation for this next level decision-making. I guess I'm just concerned about that, just because of,
But I think it is. I mean, I think the ultimate decision comes to the council at some point and we, you know, we don't, like you said, we don't know what we're going to actually see in a
Right.
year or 2 years. So I think this gives us the umbrella to do something, that whatever we deem appropriate when it does come to us, but we still have to make that decision kind of based on that individual project merits. And we really don't know what we're going to see here in our.
I think we just want to be careful that in general, we try to fund projects equitably.
Yes.
So that we do it, you know, if we're going to do it one way, we do it the same way the next time if the project seems similar. I mean, it's not that we have to.
Similar, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, similar. It doesn't have to be a perfect identical thing. I hear you about waiving fees, but that just means that the town's paid out of the general fund and we still have a housing fund, but it's certainly at this point, I don't know if we want to take more money out of the general fund.
Right now, probably not.
Right,
Yeah.
so as long as there's a way of,
Well, as long as we're being consistent though. as long
well, I think
we're-
as long as we're consistent, that's fine. And I was gonna say, as long as we think that,
We gotta
This-
pay our bills. Just depends on how-
yeah, so when this policy gets written, as long as there's a way that we could have paid those fees,
Mhm.
I'm okay with that. And then we can decide in the
Yeah.
future if we want to waive them as a
Flexible, right,
different, but that feels like we probably want to be in a better financial place to start
Mhm.
moving.
Agreed, yeah. But I think,
In our general plan that we're raising these fees.
it's in the general plan or housing element that is consistent with, it is consistent with a policy in the housing element, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
So
in the program,
to
yeah.
go against that, but do not waive them.
Well,
It's not quite what it says.
well, that's a discussion we'd make kind of on a case by case basis. Yeah, we can go back and review it. We'll come to it. Let's take Rita's comment and then we can wrap this up. Rita, I'm going to ask that you comment right now specifically on include the affordable housing fund discussion, and I'll call on you again about your other comment separately.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, and a point of order, one of the council members is recused concerning discussion of Willow's comments. But for the inclusionary housing, my question, I think the first one is answered about how much money has already been committed, and that I hope that the money is being invested, not just sitting in account, not getting any interest. And also for the housing element, the drafts that have been submitted to the HUD, how much of the inclusionary housing budget money have already been committed in that document? Is that going to be revised? Is it into these suggestions? I think these suggestions on how to use the money from the two sub members is just excellent starting point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Other.
He's telling us to double check the housing element. Do some of the programs already commit use of this fund for those projects? And I need to go back. I'm saying, yes, we need to check.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's
we
right.
need to check. My impression is we haven't committed, my impression is we've got the programs are described, but there's no discussion of how to actually pay for them yet. So we
I mean,
could-
some of them were described as from the general fund
Right.
explicitly, but I don't remember any that's we're using the only fund. But yeah, we're checking.
Yep,
Totally
yep.
worth checking.
So as a next step would be another draft of this, is that? Do you have the guidance you need? Does staff have the guidance they need as far as terms of another draft or the other?
I think so. There's also been some public comments submitted. We'll take those into consideration. And John's been great about supporting us and educating us. So if we need more of that, we'll let him know.
Yeah, just to say that John really has been amazing.
Yeah.
He's been totally available, made it happen,
It's good to hear. Not surprising.
gave us
Thank you.
hope.
Okay, then we'll wrap up there and we'll move on. Thank you, John. And let's see. Next up is liaison
So
reports.
before we do that, do you want to go
Yes.
back? to
Yeah, I was going
Okay,
to.
sorry.
Yes, so before we discuss, Rita, why don't you, you had other comments, I believe. Go ahead and comment now on the item 9A, the town manager update.
Thank you very much for allowing me this opportunity. As you know, I'm one of the residents that have been asking for clarification on different items concerning the town's finance for many years, showing up to the finance meetings, asking questions at the town council meetings and at other committee meetings and to people in the town. Well, this hasn't been new questions. I'm glad that they're being addressed in some way right now, but please be patient with the residents. That's what I'm asking, is because the residents have been asking, the residents have been promised quick solutions or deadlines and different dates. And so, it's a thing about, trusting when we start receiving things. And I just want to say that out loud on behalf of myself and all residents that I've spoken with, because if you look back at some of the meetings, that are on YouTube right now, you will see that the residents have been very concerned about the finances. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item 10, liaison reports. I see.
I think I've already done mine.
Okay.
Before. From
Yeah.
October 24th. I think I did that.
Yeah.
earlier.
See yours, and I see one from Sarah on the Hawthorne's meeting. Did you want to comment on that, or does anyone have questions on either?
I think the only addition I have on the Hawthorns, that's an update, is that there has been some discussion about the traffic report and who's doing what and what's being used. And how, long story short, the Hawthorns is going to be doing a traffic report, but it is for their project, the impact of their project only, and cyclists in that area. So just to clarify, that's going to be their next step on traffic.
Not
Sure.
just cyclists. Cars.
All traffic.
Traffic and
Yeah.
including cyclists.
And horses, I'm sure. Okay, is there public comment on liaison reports?
So I've got a couple of.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's right. Because these things, so EPC is always right before you have to get the packet in. So I apologize for not getting something written up. Couple of things. I talked to the town manager today. I mean, we need to figure out how we're moving the evacuation plan forward. That sort of got stalled.
Yeah.
I think you were supposed to be in a meeting in October that you missed.
I did miss it.
You're
yes.
right. So what I asked them is they're going to give me a list of questions they want answered. I said I would do my best to get them. I haven't gotten that list yet. But I will bring that to the town manager and the mayor, and then hopefully we can sort of move ahead on that stuff. And it's also part of the 7+13 that we need to do something with an evacuation plan. So we need to sort of link all these things together and then figure out the right way to move that forward. Because there's a lot of good stuff there. We just need to figure out how to get it moved forward. And then the other one was on the Open Space Committee. There was a letter in our packet. Hopefully you guys had a chance to read it. It was basically public comment that showed up in the last couple of days. It's on that link about, we're being told we have $44,000 to spend on open space maintenance, and we're going to take it out of UUT. And it led to the larger set of issues, which is people can't tell us how much we're spending. They can't tell us how much it cost last year. It's like, how can we possibly make any decisions? So it gets a little bit back to the larger financial issues that we have. But I would ask, if you haven't had a chance to read it, I think it's well written, and it makes 3 sort of important points. And I think it's important that, we collectively as a group all understand those points, because they're indicative of larger problems, right? I mean, if an open space committee and the conservation committee can't understand how much is being spent on open space maintenance, then they can't actually help us as committees make sort of informed decisions. Right. So I think that was sort of my net on what they were saying is, if you guys can't give us any information, we kind of can't do our jobs. I put that in quotes, but as volunteers, we're not a very helpful volunteer committee if you can't give us some information to work with.
Mhm.
So anyway, please take a look at that if you have a chance. Okay. Thanks.
Other comments from the council? Is there public comment on item 10? Okay, Carolyn, go ahead.
Great. Thank you very much, Commissioner Oak, Town Council Member Mr. Taylor, for making that comment. This is a problem over all the committees. We are trying to find out what our taxpayers' money is spent on. We have several consultants. We don't know their progress, and hopefully you will help us find a solution. The presentation from the new town manager is very promising, and I hope he will start attending our committees. So I applaud you for that. Thank you. In regards to the Hawthorns, we're a little short on the report. The PPTS recommended that we have 2 accesses, Los Trancos and Alpine. We're very concerned about one entrance at Alpine for several reasons. And you should attend our meeting or should read our recommendations to fully understand the issues that we have, and to find out that Hawthorne is only recommending Alpine is very concerning. So several issues again, it's complicated. Unfortunately, we had a planning department over the last 5 years who had consultants, and every project was had a traffic report. Every time it was a singular traffic report, just like the Hawthorns want to address the traffic report to their project only. That doesn't work. We have now so many projects. They have, every time they had a singular traffic report, they all came out with less than significant impact. No, I'm sorry. We have a very negative cumulative impact in Portola Valley. And that is why we have a traffic problem and we have to address it. So I hope that this town manager will work with us, and we will continue to support everybody in this community to get the results that we need. The results that we have asked for so many years, and the results that have been neglected for so many years. Thank you.
Thank you. Christy.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on the Hawthorns, my experience in preparing a letter 5 hours before. I was on a different time zone, so I made a great effort to get in the letter. And then it was not distributed to the public access working group, which the document says it would be distributed if you submitted your letter 2 hours before. So I, was asking our 2 voting members from Portola Valley, did you receive my letter? If I had not, asked them that question, I would just assume they got my letter. So all 13 people did not get my letter that was written 5 hours before. So they now have put something in place where they will be looking at their emails 2 hours before a meeting, and we will be assured that the public access working group will receive the letters from now on. So we ran into a problem already on that, and this is just from the 1026 meeting. So I encourage all residents that write letters to follow up with our 2 voting members, Karen Vatra or Helen Quinn, to make sure that they received the letter. They have committed to do that from now on, but this is really important. And I still encourage the Hawthorns and MROSD to have the town center meetings at town hall like we did at the beginning of the project, so they can fully hear everyone's concerns. So we're doing these, smaller meetings now, but we're writing letters and they're not getting where they should be. Is super frustrating. So I just wanted to report that back. And then we are looking for a full, all arterials, all main roads traffic report conducted by the town of Portola Valley. If we don't do that, the cumulative effects of traffic for all the projects won't be looked at as a whole. So we can't just do Neely separate, Windy Hills separate, Hawthorne separate, Firehouse separate, Willows Common separate. Do you see we're piecemealing it in little areas? But we also have to look at the unincorporated Alpine Road at the end of the road and put that 2017 traffic report on Alpine together with the rest of the cumulative. So I encourage the town council to do a full traffic report for our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other hands? Okay. If there are no other comments on item 10, then we are ready for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, 9:40.